Hello, we are here to help. And have you ever wondered that restaurants you love so much, just how clean and how healthy is the food they're making back there? Is the staff doing everything they should? Consumer expert Diane Lee with us once again. Diane, we're talking about restaurants making the grade.
Yeah, sometimes things are better left unknown, but when it comes to your food, I suggest you'd be in the know. And that was the point of this story. I explain.
Every year, about 48 million Americans get sick from foodborne illnesses, according to the Centers for Disease Control. But so few of us take the time to check the inspection reports of the restaurants and grocery stores we visit. I'm 7 News consumer anchor Diane Lee with how to get the skinny before you eat out. The old proverb, what you don't know can't hurt you, dates back to the 1500s, centuries before we knew about pathogens like Salmonella, E. coli, and Listeria. For the few who even notice food score stickers in restaurant windows, far fewer take the time to look at the state database detailing the safety record of the places we eat. Which is why getting the word out has become a bit of a passion for Leah Phillips in Spartanburg.
Some of the pictures I was seeing, I was like, okay, that's really bad. I don't want to go spend my hard-earned money at a place that's not going to be all that clean.
Every day, Phillips shares the latest reports on restaurants in Spartanburg, Greenville, and Cherokee counties on her 3 Facebook pages called SCDA Food Grades. The source? A new online food score database with the Department of Agriculture, which recently took over inspections from the Department of Health. The reports are searchable by restaurant name, location, time frame, and grade, the lowest of which is a C.
You can start seeing, based on trends, the history of the inspection, whether or not a facility might have just got something that was kind of a one-timer, or if you can start seeing a pattern.
Derek Underwood, the Assistant Commissioner for the Consumer Protection Division, says their 115 inspectors examined 25,000 retail food establishments across the state, including grocery stores. When you click on the reports, you'll see a number grade up top and red highlights for problem areas. You'd think cleanliness would be the major red flag, but Underwood says food temperature is just as important. When a consumer is reading a report, what should they really look for?
Proper cooking, proper cooling, and proper reheating. Those are the 3 things that can get you sick.
They have the address.
Phillips says she finds the report's photos particularly helpful, illustrating why we should care, from inaccessible hand washing to improper thawing. By law, a restaurant must display their food grade right at the entrance. And if it's changed, the inspector will switch that out right away. It can never be altered or covered up. Sidewall Pizza has 4 locations with a track record of mostly A's in the last decade.
There's your ice cream.
In August, their Greenville location got its first C, with red flags like improper heating and cooling, plus uncleaned equipment and fruit flies. While most establishments might shy away from talking about it, co-owner Lauren France says she believes transparency, along with quick corrective actions, help customers gain trust.
We felt like we received really clear, actionable feedback from the inspector, and were able to take action right away and get that reinspection within 24 hours and get that A grade back.
So even though it was a tough C grade to begin with, you felt it was helpful.
Absolutely. We have tremendous respect for the feedback that we get from the inspectors. We take it very seriously.
And Phillips says so should consumers, even if looking up your go-to spot has you holding your breath.
My favorite restaurants, they actually scored really well, and I was really excited.
So whether you're serving or being served, adding that side of transparency can make everyone's meal a little easier to digest. Now, the regulations that you'll see in the food grade reports are ones you should consider following in your own kitchen to prevent foodborne illness.
That's pretty good advice, that last note there, Diane.
And to that end, really quickly, Gordon, I learned a lot so much about my own kitchen and the importance of that within 2 hours after cooking a food, you really want to make sure that it's in the refrigerator, sometimes even quicker. So you can learn these things and help in your own kitchen, of course.
And you really did hammer the most important things here. I mean, some things are just cleanliness, some things are just gross. Improperly cooked meats can make you extremely sick. So that is the stuff to really worry about.
Definitely.
Thawing, cooking, reheating.
Reheating is a big one too. In the microwave, make sure you put that stuff in for long enough, because even pathogens can grow in your refrigerator, unfortunately.
It is a surprise to me, I guess to a lot of people, when they first learn about this stuff, that a C is an F. You know, C is as bad as it gets. C that is not repaired means they can shut down a restaurant.
C is bad. I believe there is one grade worse, and that's where it's in, you know, real shutdown mode. But C is bad. I mean, C, there isn't your standard F in this kind of situation.
Okay. And so I've worked in restaurants before. You don't always know when the health inspector is coming. It can be a huge surprise. Maybe they catch you at your lowest staffed, worst moment of all time, and restaurants can be caught off guard. Good on Sidewall Pizza for agreeing to talk to you about that kind of situation.
I have so much respect for that company. I mean, they clearly do a great job. They have several locations. They have an excellent track record when you go back and look. This was one situation, and Gordon, I'm glad you brought up, you know, working in the food industry. It's a very tough job, and there are good days and bad days and worse days, and you're right, you can catch it when perhaps there might be short staff or something like that, or if there's a new employee that has recently been trained but hasn't learned the ropes completely, that can also affect things. So all of those factors do play into it, and that's why these state inspectors, they acknowledge they still have to give the grade, but they are quick to change that if the restaurant is quick to take action.
All right, let's talk more about that. So if I look up my favorite restaurant, and at some point they did get a C, so they at least had one very bad day where they violated some of these guidelines. How quickly is their reinspection? How many opportunities they have to remedy that before they actually do get in trouble with the
an
health
important
department?
question here. It can be extremely quick. And what the restaurants that are wise do is they tell the inspector, please, we're on this. Would you please come back as soon as tomorrow or as soon as 2 days from now? I know Sidewall Pizza had things change so quickly that the minute they found out that inspectors had arrived, they had several other team members come to that location and start the process of fixing everything that the inspector found. So even though they were already in the process of fixing it, the inspector still had to report it, but some of those things had been fixed even before the inspector left. So they asked that inspector to come back the next day, and that's when the grade was changed.
Well, if you own a restaurant, I'm sure getting a C grade gets your complete attention immediately. Would you eat at a restaurant? If you went to a restaurant and they had a C on the door, would you eat there?
Before I did this story, I really was one of those people that never really looked at the grade before I walked in, even though it has to be there visible with all of the entrances, especially the front entrance. But now I do a little bit more, and I will say if I saw a C, I would be concerned. Knowing how quickly that C could change back to an A, as long as the inspector can come back out, I would certainly be concerned. It might give me food for thought, pun intended.
Okay, but would you turn around and leave? I mean, I think I would. I'll be honest with you. If I went to a restaurant and I saw a C on the door, I think I would pivot and say, well, they'll have time to fix it.
It depends how badly I really want what they have to serve.
How hungry you are.
Or how long I've been on a date night, but
Okay.
But
Flexible.
I do want to take a minute because I want people to learn the website here, Gordon. So if you don't mind if we pull this up, and this is specific obviously to South Carolina, but other states, if you're watching, will have similar food grade sites. And when you scroll down there, Gordon, we don't want to put in any establishment and make any particular
I just put
restaurant.
Greenville, and for some reason
Yeah,
I put
put
Georgetown
Greenville,
County.
and maybe do maybe not Georgetown County or Greenville County. Do the grade selection. Let's try a C.
All right, let's see how many we got. And start date. Do I need to fill that out, or
Good question. We could do the more recent stuff. Yeah,
here.
that's
Okay.
fine.
Well, it didn't take, but let's see if that works.
Yeah, that
Oh,
might
look
show
at
us
that!
where
It found a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, and you can look at the dates here. So there's so basically. On April 6th of 2024, you can actually set that by date, Gordon. If you press the word date, if you want to see that in an orderly fashion more, that would
this
be,
goes back a long
yeah,
way,
that
so
goes
let's
back a
try
really
that.
long way, so 2022. But you could specify the date as you saw in the search mechanism. But here's some of the C's that have come up, and the great thing is if you go over to the PDF, Gordon. So we could pick one just to show them what the PDF
And
looks.
before I do that, I have to ask you about this. So if people look on the far right here, and I know this can be hard to see maybe on your screen, but look at this. This is one establishment that on April 11th of this year had a routine inspection and got a C, and then there's a follow-up 10 days later, and there is still a C. So they came back, and evidently whatever had been a problem there the first time was not remedied, or maybe they found something else.
Exactly. No, they didn't make the correction because that was 10 days later and it was still there. Scroll back up to the top of this. I just wanted to show you that what we need to see is not all the writing in black. You need to go to the red. And so that first one, number 2, management, employee knowledge, responsibilities, and reporting, that was one of the situations. If you care about that, that's something you'd want to know about. As we scroll down, you'll see more in red.
See, this is where we get proper cold holding
yes.
temperature.
That's where people are going to care more.
You should care.
You should care because that's where foodborne illnesses can arise. Right. So, you guys, we're reporting all the time, as you know, Gordon, on things like E. coli outbreak and salmonella poisoning, and this is how it all occurs. And certain foods are more prone to that. Anything with mayonnaise that's left out, things like that can be, make you sick.
Right. Yeah. That's the whole reason we have these inspections in the first place.
Right.
So what is that protocol here? So this is an establishment that within the past 30 days had a C grade. They came back 10 days later. There's another C grade. What does that mean? Just more follow-up inspections, or is there a point where the health department says, that's it?
It would for now be more follow-up inspections. I think that any state department is wanting these small businesses to, survive and give them the help that they need. They're going to give them extra help and resources and how to make things better. But ultimately, it's up to the actual restaurant to make those changes. And if they don't, and if they have too many C grades, and they would get, put under kind of a probationary measure. There are very few that the state has had to close, but they have had to close some that really just don't make the changes.
I am a little surprised by how many of these. There's a C routine, which is that surprise inspection where they got them the first time. And then the follow-up a week later, it's kind of common on here. That some
and
of
if
these
you type in
still have a
sidewall
C.
pizza, you'll see that wasn't the case with them. So
they,
actually,
they cleared it right up.
Yeah, that would be one maybe you could kind of see as we go.
Okay.
But and that's one of the things you do want to give your favorite restaurant, the benefit of the doubt. Make sure that they are making the changes. You can check on them if you have some favorites. That allows you to be able to see. But if you'll see there,
you're right. Yeah, sidewall is almost.
So they have a lot of
A's,
Gordon, and the C is probably buried at this point. If you scroll down a little bit more, you might find it. It was only in one of their locations, and they do have a few. But you'll see it said a C, and then right after that, it was back to an A.
So they cleared it right back
up.
So it is the kind of thing, I guess, where even when I have the C's pulled up, it is the good news here, because I know from working in restaurants, again, these are very, very thorough inspections.
Yeah.
And frankly, given I pulled up a county that's got 500,000 people in it, the fact that there were relatively few C's means most restaurants actually are doing a pretty good job with this.
I would say by far most restaurants have the B's and the A's. And, I'm curious, Gordon, with you working in the restaurant industry, what did you notice were some of the greater offenders?
Well, you try to avoid, to your point, Diane, you're trying to stay off the food safety violations, but it's wiping down every surface to the appropriate way. It's cleaning, it's how the floors are mopped and swept at the end of the night. If you work in a restaurant and you've been stuck on the closing shift, that's a lot of work at the end of the night, every night, just to make sure you are complying with state regulations to have the restaurant cleaned and put away the way it has to be, or you can get dinged for all of those things.
Yeah, it's all about the training that you give, and all about whether the employee who's there in the closing shift is not too tired to put in as much effort as is needed, and that can be rough.
I tell you, it's an extremely hard job.
It is.
We are talking about restaurant grades here. We have something very interesting coming up that I think is going to apply to literally 100% of the people watching this after we take a quick break. And welcome back. We are here to help consumer expert Diane Lee, with me, your host today, Gordon Dill, and we are going to talk about insurance, how to save a little money on insurance. It seems like 1 out of 3 commercials on TV is about how to save money on our car insurance. Diane, first and foremost, I guess it depends on just how much coverage you're willing to buy.
Yeah, and one of the points with this upcoming story is that you don't want to skip, because if you do, you could get in trouble. But that doesn't mean that there aren't ways to save on car insurance.
Rising car insurance premiums may be driving you crazy, but a word of caution. Some people looking to cut costs are dropping coverage in a way that leaves them vulnerable to lawsuits. I'm 7 News consumer anchor Diane Lee with a deep dive into creative ways to slash your premium without losing crucial coverage. We'd all love to put the brakes on rising car insurance premiums. The rates jumped 20% in 1 year and 50% in the last 4 years, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. But you don't need to tell that to Margot and Rick Grove in Spartanburg.
It goes up and up and up every year.
That's why the couple took a closer look at their insurance rate breakdown to find ways to save.
So I says, why should I be paying this, 24% of my premium for something that, I really don't need.
Rick is referring to the cost of underinsured coverage, a line item that you may find, like the Groves, is the most costly coverage and rising.
You can see dropping down to the underinsured, here we are, it's the most expensive coverage.
$120 on Margot's bill and about the same on Rick's. When he did the math, that accounted for 24% of his 6-month premium.
And I'm paying for somebody else's neglect.
So why is it so expensive? For nearly 20 years, the South Carolina limits of liability have remained at $25,000 for bodily injury per person, $50,000 for accident coverage, and $25,000 for property damage. The problem, more computerized vehicles on the road cost well over $25,000 to fix, let alone replace. Agent Max Fain with Carolina's Choice Insurance says that leaves more and more drivers responsible for an accident falling short.
That claim could be more than just property damage. So if you don't have enough insurance, you can be sued by the person that you hit or by their company.
Are you actually seeing this happening?
It has definitely happened.
To avoid that, Fain recommends a minimum liability coverage of $100, $300, $100.
We're here to protect the consumer ultimately.
Michael Wise, the director of the South Carolina Department of Insurance, says the agency approved larger than usual rate hikes in recent years because data show without them, insurance companies might not have enough to pay claims.
Is it common to approve a double-digit rate increase?
Historically, it has not been common to approve a double-digit rate increase. Right now, we are seeing a lot of inflationary impacts on those rates, but typically we have not seen rate increases of this magnitude.
It's harder nowadays, but there are still ways to save. You can pay in full, bundle, drop towing and rental if you have a backup, and agree to telematics where they track your driving.
Fain says it saved him money. For the Groves, not so much.
The idea of flooring it is not popular with the drive safe and save.
Yeah, I'd looked at one of my reports and they said I accelerated too fast and I braked too hard.
What did save Rick money was dropping that costly underinsured coverage, a move he could only make because he has great health care, his car is paid off, and it's worth far less than $25,000.
Yeah, it just made sense.
Now, Rick saved $240 a year by dropping that underinsured coverage. But for someone like Margot, who has a car worth more than $25,000, that would not be a smart move. So always check with your insurance agent before dropping any type of coverage.
Wow, now this is complicated.
Yeah.
Let's start with that underinsured. Basically, what I'm doing is paying on my insurance bill extra insurance coverage for a gap to damage to my vehicle caused by someone else.
Yes.
That their insurance doesn't cover.
You got it perfectly, Gordon, and I'm glad you clarified that because I want to make sure that people understand that you are paying because somebody else, likely who hits you, is not going to have full coverage. They're going to have the minimum limits in South Carolina, and therefore, if they hit you and your car is worth more than $25,000, or listen to this, if they hit you and another car is involved in the accident and they only have $25,000 in coverage. Exactly. Yeah. And that's where even the man that I interviewed in the story might be up a creek if that scenario happens, because even though his car is worth far less at this point than $25,000, if there's multiple cars involved in the injury and there's that one car at fault that has only $25,000 in their limits, then he would maybe not have full coverage on his car, be repaid.
I mean, don't I have some remedy in the courts on that? If you cause an accident and your insurance doesn't cover it, can't I force you to pay for the damage to my car?
Yeah, so and you might not necessarily be the one to take them to, court per se. It might be your own insurance company that would step in, pay that overage and then take them to court for you potentially. But if you have deliberately taken off that particular line item, you might be at risk there. However, it's sort of that risk and reward that we're all having to debate when we're making these payments. And the man that I spoke with felt that the savings annually for him were enough, and the likelihood of it happening were rare enough in terms of his driving, because he's retired, that he was willing to make that choice.
All right, let me pull these numbers back up, because this is just in the state of South Carolina, right? These are by law the minimum amount of insurance coverage that you have to have for an accident you cause to someone else.
Right, and this has not changed for at least well over a decade, if not more. $25,000 for bodily injury per person that you must have, $50,000, as you can see, for accident coverage, and $25,000 for property damage. And so, you're left in a situation where, because this is the limit, that you must have at least this, that a lot of people just choose that option because they're looking to save on their insurance. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these, I mentioned 1 out of 3 commercials, but when they do say save a lot of money getting your car insurance, what they're talking about is buying minimum coverage that works for you, perhaps. But this is this is it. This is minimum coverage.
And what they're not really considering when they make that offer is how much the price of cars have increased. So whereas these limits have stayed the same for well over a decade, the price of cars, as we all know, have skyrocketed. I mean, buying a car, you can maybe get a car if you're lucky for $25,000 at this point, but a lot of the cars, the average price is now around $40,000, and some are obviously upwards of much more.
So that's what you were showing here.
Yes.
This is when you say recommended limits. Who's made these recommendations?
So it is the insurance agents who recommend this, and I understand. The first line of thought is, they're just trying to
sell you more insurance.
Yeah, they're trying to make more money. But the reason why is because of the trend that they're seeing, that the industry is seeing, of people being sued, usually by another insurance company, but you are, as an individual, sued, or by the driver, when you do not have enough coverage, because it just has become so expensive. And if you have the bare minimum of coverage, and you cause an accident, then you really are liable.
And having covered a lot of lawsuits, and I know you have too, Diane, to that angle on you can sue and recover some of that money. You can sue and get a judgment. You can sue and win in court. That doesn't mean you will ever actually get any money. You can't get money from somebody who simply doesn't have it, for example.
Yeah, that happens all too often, unfortunately.
Yeah. So you would say the big thing to pay attention here, let's say I am shopping for an insurance policy. You're saying don't go for the minimum, but again, consider those price points for the damage I cause to someone else and the damage someone else will cause to me.
Exactly. It's both of those factors. And that's why I was advocating in the story for looking into some other ways to save. We've got, you can bundle your insurance. We've all heard of that. Gordon, I'd be curious to know whether you would ever do the tracking that's provided that can reduce the bill.
I'm not going to cop to being a bad driver here, but I've gotten a speeding ticket or two.
Well, you know what? I might be in the same boat, so I totally understand that, and I might not choose that option either. But
I've seen you drive.
Oh yeah, you have. You see me racing home after work.
Like I'm standing still. So I advise you not to get the
bedtime.
Yeah. Okay.
No, but there are other tricks to the trade too. For instance, the cycle of when your renewal comes up plays a part in you getting a better price. So, for instance, if you are calling about a month before your renewal comes up and you're asking about deductions and things that you can take advantage of, or if you're shopping around about a month before your renewal, then that shows that you are a proactive person who may indicate that you're a safer driver. At least that's statistically what these companies have found. And they may offer you a better rate, certainly better than if you got the renewal, you let it just go through, or you got the renewal notice, you forgot about it, let it go through, you realize your amount was higher, and then you wanted to cancel afterwards and go with another company. They're going to say, oh, that person, they're not very proactive, so maybe they're not the best driver.
Shop around before you get locked in.
Exactly.
Absolutely. It's the same trick you would try with a lot of your things. Hey, man, I'm thinking of shopping around, I'm thinking of buying something else. Well, have you considered this cheaper price we can offer you, right?
Yeah, always worth a call, Gordon, because that can happen all the time, no matter whether it's car insurance or your phone plan. Who knows?
All right, Diane Lee, that is our consumer expert. We are always here to help. If you've got any ideas for Diane to tackle with this, of course, or if you have questions about some of the topics that we have covered, Diane's email is right there. Mine is on here as well. If you have any questions for me, we're back with another episode very soon. Thanks for watching us here today.